There's been a lot of talk about two specific Linux distributions on YouTube lately and why you should probably not be using them. They are two Windows-themed distros, one newer than the other, Wubuntu and LinuxFX. What you'll notice right off the bat is how close these websites look to each other. That's because they're made by the same people. As you can tell right here, the Telegram support is the same. So what are these two Linux operating systems? We'll talk about that, but I first want to throw in a video from me, Mutahar. For those of you that don't know him, a big YouTuber called Some Ordinary Gamers. Let's see what he has to say.
Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar. How do you identify a Linux user? Don't worry, they'll tell you, okay? You could be at a funeral and a Linux user will come up in the most inopportune time, be like, you know, he wouldn't have died in the car accident had he been using Arch Linux, for crying out loud. Now, of course,
I had to throw that one in there because it was hilarious. But really what this video is about is me Mutahar's thoughts on Wubuntu and some of the reasons he thinks it's not worth messing with.
How these people haven't actually been looked at by Microsoft. This is like basically spreading your cheeks for a lawsuit, okay? Like, this is literally getting up and just going, yo, Microsoft, right here, right between the cheeks, baby. That's just pretty much how this works, okay? So
a very valid point to start things off with is there are a lot of copyright issues here with these distributions, taking the icon sets, taking the full theme of Microsoft Windows, and even acting as if they are Windows. We all know Microsoft owns Windows, and it's a big deal to take IP away from large companies like that. Now, there is the chance that Microsoft has reached out to these distributions and told them to take things down, but seemingly these distributions are ran from other countries than the United States, where the laws might not necessarily be in favor of Microsoft, and maybe that's how they get away with it. Regardless, Mutahar keeps making great points. I'm going to post a link to this video in the description below so you can check it out as well. You'll want to check it out after the fact, but I want to talk about several reasons why Windows-themed versions of Linux don't really make sense and you shouldn't use them. First off, we already talked about it, but legal issues. There's potential copyright and trademark infringement issues here. Also, misleading users. A Windows-themed distribution such as Ubuntu, Linux, with this Windows appearance, might mislead people to thinking that it's an actual Microsoft product and can cause confusion and frustration when it doesn't end up working the way you think it should work. Because, again, the compatibility, especially with Windows applications, is not quite there in Linux. So you're not going to be able to do the same things that you actually do in Linux, which of course can lead to frustration, especially if you're new. One other thing is serial keys. What it really looks like is these types of distributions are really trying to sell you on an upgrade. So you can get access to quote-unquote professional features, which are listed below, but it's considered a $35 donation in order to actually receive this professional key for the power tools. We all know Linux and distros are made namely in the name of open source development, and as far as I'm aware, none of the source code has been released for us to look at. While some of us, especially new users, who are trying to transition from Windows to Linux, might think of this as a nice stepping stone, I think it really just creates compatibility issues and becomes disappointing to use after a while. There's really a limited appeal. Windows-themed Linux distributions that look like Windows in appearance, in my opinion, struggle to really attract a broader audience who is interested in the full range of benefits offered by Linux. Think things like customization, security, and open source software. Those are some of the keystones to Linux distros. So if someone's going to make the plunge over to Linux, it makes much more sense for them to integrate themselves into the full environment. But that's just my opinion on it. Another thing I want to talk about is LinuxFX, seemingly ran by the same people or company. And in some sense, I have a hard time understanding what the difference actually is between the two. Yeah, the theme is different, that's for sure, but under the hood, it seems very much the same, and the websites seem almost identical, besides some screenshots. So in my opinion, it seems to just be a way to give two different themes. But why I bring up LinuxFX? Because I want to bring up an important subject and some news that happened previously to LinuxFX, coming from DistroTube themselves, who reported on a data leak. Let's listen in a little bit so we understand what happened.
I'm making a quick video today as a warning. It's a very serious situation. I hope everyone takes this seriously. Please stop using the distribution LinuxFX. And I'm not playing. I never tell people what Linux distributions to use or not to use, but in this case, LinuxFX is a very dangerous situation here. I made a video about this just a couple of days ago. Proprietary distro LinuxFX has user database compromised. What LinuxFX is, it's a Linux.
And this is something big. They actually had a compromise of their database. From what I understand, users who purchased the premium or professional key or whatever lost some important information. Think things like IP addresses, names, aka user sensitive information. So how can we trust something like Wubuntu to remain safe to use and non-compromised when it gets hacked and compromised. And Wubuntu is ran by the same people or organization that had the security leak in the first place. This is why I can't consciously recommend these types of distributions to people. Not only does it seem to be a problematic or lazy way of trying to get some donations, but I think personally, developers will find it more valuable to just embrace the Linux for its unique strengths and characteristics rather than trying to replicate the Windows experience, because Linux just can't do what Windows can do. So if you want Linux and Windows together and you want to be able to really seemingly use both, although it still sucks compared to actual Linux on a physical machine, there is Linux on Windows with WSL, or the Windows subsystem for Linux. A lot of you know about this already, but you can run Linux commands through an emulation environment called WSL, and with WSL2, it is pretty powerful on Windows. It still doesn't get you everything that you would want, and especially because Windows is notoriously known as bloatware that has telemetry built in, you're not going to get the same abilities with Windows and privacy that you would get with Linux. But regardless of that, I will make a suggestion for those of you who want a similar desktop experience, but a full-fledged Linux distribution, especially if you're coming over from something like Windows and or Mac OS. It is called Zorin OS. I've done reviews on this before. I'll put a video link that I covered Zorin in the description below as well, so you can check it out. But Zorin OS is also called an alternative to Windows and Mac OS, designed to make your computer faster, more powerful, secure, and privacy respecting. All the things that I talked about before that are important when you're using Linux. Now they have 3 different versions, and one is for schools and one is the Pro Edition. And really what you get with the Pro Edition is, yeah, some tweaks, but you get support, which is really important when going over to Linux and trying to understand how to use things. The support actually makes sense. It's something that people can use and benefit from in order to actually use Linux on their computers. If they don't understand something, they can contact that support. So this one makes a lot more sense than just quote unquote a donation. So again, it is a little steep, $48, but they have the core package, which is completely free and you can use as well. Again, the support here is really what shines, not necessarily all the other crap that you get with it. So if we compare editions, you can get the Pro or the Core. You can see the various different things that you get with them. But really, again, support's going to be the best thing. Anyways, let me know what you all think about these Windows-themed Linux distributions in the comments section below. Catch me in a great community on Discord, and I'll catch you in another video. Thanks for watching. Linux can be hard to understand, but I take the most commonly used terms, commands, and subjects in Linux, and I break them down into simple to read documents, including Linux terms, flashcards, a checklist, a cheat sheet, and a mind map. And if you're ready to level up your Linux experience and knowledge, go to learn.savvynick.com now and get access to these sheets.